Hello everybody, my name is Fortifier and welcome to Season 2, Episode 1 of the Ready Go Gaming Show. Today we're going to be talking about Rockstar. It feels really good to be back. We took a big break working on some side projects, gave a moment for pretty much everybody to relax and just play a little bit of a mental catch-up with all the videos that we released over the course of the last 3 years. Ready Go Gaming Show is my bread and butter. I love making it, I love scripting it, and doing all of this extra stuff. So starting out kind of strong, not with the greatest company. Rockstar doesn't really have that much history, and I almost considered making it a Ready Go Gaming Show special, but I figured, hey, let's go ahead and just run with what we've got. This video is kind of behind on the schedule, so I said, screw it, let's just go ahead and move forward. But I'm not going to be talking about it alone. I have two fantastic guest speakers. The first one is Farty, who is our audio engineer. Every time you hear anything that happens on here that sounds good, or sounds bad, or maybe it's just me, I don't know, he's there to do it. I've known him for about 3 years, a really great streamer, but he streams more specifically on Turkish regions now, so he does that with GTA role-playing. I don't know the name of his account, so I can't really shout it out, but just know that he's awesome and I love him to death. Next up is Lord Knight Caleb.com, a former streamer who used to play a bunch of MechWarrior, Battletech, stuff like that, Warhammer, bunch of really cool games. But instead, now he just does a bunch of moderator stuff for me, and he makes me play some of the worst games imaginable, such as Secret of Google, Secret of Mana. I know I'm gonna get some pitchforks for that, but I really don't give a shit. I hated that game. Battletoads and many other things that I know are gonna cause me mental distress. But anyway, that's enough out of me. Let's go ahead and kick it off and talk about Rockstar.
When you think of Rockstar, you probably think Grand Theft Auto. But we at the Ready Go Gaming Show always wonder, where did it all begin? Where did the legendary company that brought us one of the most controversial video games in history get their start? That happened in 1998, but their roots go even further back in time. So let's travel to where it all began, the 1980s. Rockstar's earliest roots start all the way with DMA Design, the folks who brought us the original Grand Theft Auto for Windows, MS-DOS, PlayStation, and the Game Boy Color. Their first games, however, look something like this. Hey, this isn't too bad. You know, a lot of people look down on Commodore 64 games, but they really aren't that bad. They sound really good. By the way, this is Zone Trooper, one of the games developed by David Jones and Russell Kay. Another game was Freak Out, created by Mike Daly and these folks. Well, these guys really enjoyed doing this, and they used to meet up at the Kingsway Amateur Computer Club in Dundee, Scotland.
Thankfully, this hobby led to a unification of these fine folks under the name of Acme Software, whose first title would be developed by Jones, a game called Copper Con 1. As always with the development of video games, it's easier to develop a game than to get it published and get the exposure needed to drive sales. Jones would approach Hewson Consultants, but fundamental creative differences meant no deal. However, another company, Psygnosis, expressed interest in CopperCon 1, which was renamed as Draconia and then again renamed to Menace. It was during this time that Jones and his partners learned that the name Acme Software, already a very basic and not memorable name, was already taken by another company. So, the group started working on other names, such as Visual Voyage or Elias Smith and Jones, but a strange inspiration came from an Amiga programming manual.
Direct Memory Access, a feature of computers that allows hardware to access RAM and the CPU. Well, let's take the acronym and run with it. DMA Design. And by the way, DMA in the computer world does stand for Direct Memory Access, but the DMA in the DMA Design company name doesn't really stand for anything. It just points to their inspiration. As DMA Design started to get bigger, they started making more games, importing titles to MS-DOS and the Commodore 64, games like Ballistics and Blood Money. But as time went on, projects were created and scrapped, over and over again. This kind of became a trend for DMA at the time. When the 90s rolled around, Psygnosis asked DMA to port Shadow of the Beast to the TurboGrafx 16, as well as the Commodore 64. While juggling that project, they also managed to release another title, Hired Guns, in 1993. DMA Design's true step into the spotlight would be a little puzzle game that would take the world by storm in 1991. Inspired by unused assets from a scrapped side-scrolling Wild Western game, Mike Daly took the sprites and noticed that with a little finesse in the programming, he could make the sprites move a little bit smoother. The characters would end up facing traps, and the developers had an absolute blast with it. Eventually, the idea was pitched to Psygnosis, and the epic puzzle game and series, Lemmings, was born. Lemmings would be a groundbreaking series that would see tons of sequels and modifications. In 1993, Sony would acquire Psygnosis because in a capitalist world, the little guys are bought and sold like trading cards. Now, most of the games and ports that DMA made were tied to contracts provided by Psygnosis. DMA needed more work to keep afloat, so they accepted a contract from Nintendo to work on a game called Unirally, while also working to create games for the 3DO. Thankfully, Unirally was a pretty decent success on the SNES, and if there's anything Nintendo likes, it's success.
And with great success comes opportunity. DMA would change their interest from the 3DO to a fancy new idea that Nintendo had they called the Ultra 64. For those of you not up on the history of Nintendo, the Ultra 64 was the working title for the Nintendo 64. And what game would they make? Body Harvest, the somewhat violent, in-your-face alien combat game that Nintendo probably wouldn't like because they were really strict about the content of their games, but hey, you know who doesn't care about any of that? Midway, and another British company called Gremlin. This opened the possibility for new relationships and design choices. Jones had mentioned in an interview he really disliked linear games and embraced the concept of open world games where you could go where you wanted to go and do what you wanted to do. In 1995, they did just that, making a cops and robbers sort of game known as Race and Chase, where you would run away from cops. But what if we added in Pac-Man, only instead of Pac-Man, it's a car, and instead of dots, it's people?
If you haven't figured it out by now, this became the genre-defining hit, Grand Theft Auto, which I don't even need to try to explain the commercial success of this series. Gremlin noticed this and decided to pitch the idea of acquiring DMA for roughly £4.2 million in 1997. After that, Gremlin would release Space Station Silicon Valley, Tactics, and Wild Metal Country before... Who's there?
Capitalism.
Oh, hey capitalism, what's up?
Acquisitions.
Oh, you want to acquire Gremlin? Who's that friend you got there?
Bonjour, je m'appelle Infogramme. Ça va?
It's time for some quick handoffs. You ready? Infogrames bought Gremlin, but the publishers of GTA, BMG Interactive, were bought by Take-Two, where DMA went into play and was molded into Rockstar Games, a subsidiary created by Take-Two, then effectively renamed Rockstar North. See, it's really simple after all, and that's pretty much it. From start to finish, GTA has been the cash cow of Rockstar.
That's not all.
What?
Yeah, that's not all.
What do you mean that's not all?
That's not everything, bro.
Yeah, brah, we're not done.
What else could there be?
Oh, there's more. So much more.
How so?
Rockstar has subsidiaries.
Yeah, like 40 of
Well,
them.
no, not 40 of them, something around 12 of them, and I'm ready to talk about them. So let's go. Rockstar had tons of subsidiaries. And yes, that all played a pivotal role in many aspects of Rockstar's video game history, so it's only fair that we mention them. Something you may not know, Rockstar's subsidiaries all share the same basic logo, they just use different colors to mark which subsidiary it is. Rockstar Dundee started off as Ruffian Games, created by Gary Liddon, Billy Thompson, and Gareth Noyce.
Nice.
Yeah, Noyce. Originally, this group consisted of people from Real Time Worlds as well as Zen Studios. You might have heard of Real Time Worlds for some of their not-so-well-known games such as Crackdown and All Points Bulletin. Ruffian really didn't do that much outside of spending most of its time as a Microsoft-funded development team. And their big contribution to the gaming industry for the most part was the Halo Master Chief Collection, which they kind of helped with while 343 Industries led the charge. Oh, and they helped work on Kinect's Star Wars. All in all, they really just kind of stuck their heads in the room while others worked, and for some reason they were acquired by Rockstar last year after sticking their heads in some Rockstar projects in 2019.
Rockstar India is a lesser-known acquisition because they really only worked on one thing. During the release of various Rockstar games, namely Red Dead Redemption, LA Noire, and Max Payne 3, Rockstar worked with Technicolor SA. And ultimately, it stuck. The one game they developed would be Red Dead Redemption 2, but it wasn't credited solely to Rockstar India, instead being credited to Rockstar Studios as a whole, which is something that Rockstar does if multiple subsidiaries work together to accomplish something. Pretty nifty, huh?
When you think of publishing within Rockstar, look no further than Rockstar International. That's their only job, to publish games. Not really much more to say about these guys. Rockstar Leeds started off as Mobius Entertainment in 1997. They remade Alfred Chicken on the Game Boy called Alfred's Adventure, and worked on oddball games for various companies. For example, they worked the GBA conversion for High Heat Major Baseball 2002 and 2003, both of which were, well, kind of shit. Oh, by the way, right around this time is when Mobius has decided to sign on with the 3DO company. And if you know anything about the 3DO company, is that their biggest downfall was right in their name, the 3DO. 3DO didn't fare well in the early 2000s and would eventually go bankrupt, leading to Microsoft to acquire them, splitting up the team working on the game Army Men and selling the assets to Crave Entertainment, which went bankrupt, and realizing that the High Heat IP was basically trash. So good job, Microsoft, you bought a lemon. As an independent company without anyone for direction, they didn't fare too bad. They made a few games for random companies, such as American Idol for Codemasters, GBA adaptations of EA and LEGO titles, but in 2004, Rockstar decided to incorporate them. Their sole job would be to make handheld titles, which many were tied to GTA, so Chinatown Wars, Liberty and Vice City Stories, you get the idea.
Every great company has a component that oversees quality assurance. That's all Rockstar Lincoln does. But it has unique origins. Lincoln started off as Spidersoft in 1992, featuring folks that previously made ZX Spectrum games. Again, much like other companies Rockstar acquired, they worked more so on porting titles as opposed to their own titles. After some administrative stockholding changes, Take-Two acquired Spidersoft and rebranded them Tarantula Studios, where they continued to make handheld games. Since 2001, they have solely been quality assurance for Rockstar, which isn't really a bad gig. Word on the street is they have some pretty cool employee benefits.
This is one of the first occasions of Rockstar creating their own subsidiaries. Rockstar London was responsible for Manhunt 2, Midnight Club LA Remix, Max Payne 3, and they even supported development of the genre-defining GTA 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2. We've talked a lot about Grand Theft Auto. In fact, we've pretty much painted the picture of how Rockstar was fueled by Grand Theft Auto for years. But sometimes people overlook that Rockstar had plenty more to offer than just the opportunity to punch some stranger in the face while wielding a katana. They gave us a glimpse into the life of a troubled schoolboy named Jimmy in Bully. But Bully was released by Rockstar Vancouver. Where does New England come into play? Well, they started off as Mad Dog Software, but caught the attention of Rockstar when they worked on the remake, Bully Scholarship Edition. And then they quickly raised up in popularity to work with the groups that would form Rockstar Studios, which mostly consisted of Rockstar Vancouver, Toronto, and Leeds. On their own, Mad Dog did some pretty cool games, mostly Empire Earth, and also supported propaganda games in the creation of the 2008 Turok remake. We literally just covered this, Jesus fucking Christ. San Diego had an interesting start. Diego Angel had ambitions to become a film director and dabbled in computer animation in his off time. This was the 70s, so investing in the industry led to Angel Studios, which paved the way to cooperative work with Silicon Graphics. Silicon Graphics had another client named Genyo Takeda, leading to a Nintendo 64 bid for animation. Angel Studios did tons of stuff, such as the animation for the Sega CD version of Echo: The Tides of Time, cutscenes for Mr. Bones on the Saturn, and many well-known games such as Resident Evil 2's Nintendo 64 port, and even Midtown Madness, which pinged Take-Two. They had a hand in almost every single important Rockstar title from Spy Hunter 2 all the way to Red Dead Redemption 2.
Rockstar Toronto started off as Image. How the fuck do you pronounce it? Excel at Imagination. They made a few games. The one that stood out was Quarantine, which was a racing game published by Game Tech in 1994. But in 1995, they'd be purchased by Game Tech. More specifically, a subsidiary of Game Tech named Alternative Reality Technologies, ART for short. They were responsible for games such as Dark Colony and Quarantine 2 Road Warriors. But in 1999, ART was bought by Rockstar. So realistically, whatever the fuck that is, or whatever was left of it, just rode the roller coaster. They rebranded as Rockstar Canada, but where they had 2 offices in Canada, Vancouver and Toronto, they decided to break them up into their own companies. Their first major Rockstar release was the expansion pack for GTA 1, but their first full game, The Warriors, is worth checking out as well.
Vancouver started off as Barking Dog Studios, who worked on Homeworld Cataclysm and the Beta 5 update of Counter-Strike, and a few other titles. Eventually, they would be turned into Rockstar Vancouver and dissolved into Rockstar Toronto.
And here's the last one that we'll talk about today, Rockstar Vienna. They started off as Neo Software in 1993 and made a game called Whale's Voyage on the Amiga CD32, which, well, if you've ever played the Amiga 32, it's got some novelty to it. That means it sucks massive fucking dick. They worked on a few other titles such as The Clue and The Sting. In 1999, Computech Media bought them out, then Gameplay.com bought them out, and then Computech said, holy shit, this company hasn't done fucking anything, let's sell it to Take-Two, and also let's only let them work on Max Payne only on the Xbox. True story. They made a couple of ports of GTA games and started development for Manhunt 2, but they didn't stand a chance. They closed their doors in 2007. And there you have it, all of the subsidiaries of Rockstar. Maybe later I'll make a video on the color coding of all the studios just for shits and gigs, but for right now, it's time to talk about my favorite part of the Ready Go Gaming Show, the franchises. Hopefully you see a game that you want to check out. Let's get started with something obscure, a music game, or more so, a musical mixer game. This title was made from a collaboration with a musical producer, Timbaland, and lets you mix music, so it's pretty simple. It's a standalone title, so if you're into music, maybe check it out. Supposedly it's cool, but we'll let you be the judge. The next game is one that you have definitely heard about, Bully. Sure, GTA is cool, but have you played Rockstar's standalone games? Out of all of them, this one for me personally was one of the best. In Bully, you play as Jimmy Hopkins, who was just dumped off by his mother at a boarding school. You'll get engrossed in the plot quickly, and it's genuinely a cool time. You must balance reputation with a bunch of groups, such as the Greasers, the Nerds, the Preppies, the Jocks, and the Bullies, all while still going to school. The city is well established in the game, and the missions really don't overstay their welcome. There was some teasing of a sequel, but that died pretty quickly, and as of last year, there's really been no further talk of a follow-up. If you want to check this game out, try the Scholarship Edition. Cleans up some of the worst bugs and glitches.
It goes without saying that this franchise is the one that put Rockstar, DMA Design at the time, on the map. There are quite a few games, so we'll try and keep it somewhat short, starting with where it all began. GTA in 1997. Set in an awkward top-down perspective, GTA was the beginning of a long string of fantastic games that pushed the boundaries of what would be allowed in video games. Violence in games such as GTA, Phantasmagoria, Carmageddon, and Night Trip were pinging Congress to do something. All that didn't matter though, GTA was and is incredibly successful. The plot was simple, get a set number of points by doing missions. If you fail those, just keep doing whatever socially deviant thing you can do until you get enough points. It's not exactly easy on the eyes, and neither was the expansion that was dropped called London 1969, which was the same game but in England. This is also true of a further freeware expansion called London 1969-1961. GTAception, huh? The next game would release 2 years later, and it was simply titled Grand Theft Auto 2. If you played Grand Theft Auto 1, you essentially played Grand Theft Auto 2. Not that much changed, but it seemed to play a little bit better. Instead of just blindly doing missions, you can choose to do missions for a certain syndicate. This in turn will cause a shift in balance between rivals, so there is some sense of strategy to maximize the number of points you can get. But the direction of GTA would change with the industry moving towards 3D environments, and DMA was on the ball, though met with difficulty. Many of the developers at DMA didn't really know how to work with 3D environments, so Grand Theft Auto 3 would be their guinea pig to see if the concept would work, and boy did it.
In GTA 3, you play as Claude, who works his way up the criminal ladder, doing various missions that are too numerous to mention here, but the most annoying one is chasing after a van that's dropping porno mags in the street to disenfranchise a politician. GTA 3 was met with critical acclaim, and if you want to truly experience GTA without all the top-down bullshit, you can start here. However, fun fact, you can play this game in a top-down perspective, and it would be the final main entry series to accommodate that. The sole exception would be Chinatown Wars, which we will get to in a little bit. The next game would be a blast to the 80s with GTA Vice City, taking place in Miami, dealing with the crack epidemic, glam metal, and perhaps the best soundtrack in any GTA game. Vice City was a facelift for GTA 3, but included motorcycles. It also felt like the map was a tad bit smaller, but the game was magnificent. You play as Tommy Vercetti, who just got released from prison for murder. Basically, you are getting back into the mob game, and that's all you really need to know. The final PS2 release for GTA is my personal favorite, GTA San Andreas, released in 2004. It was also my first experience with Grand Theft Auto. You play as CJ, getting out of prison and pretty much going back to the hood, getting back into the criminal game, making friends and allies, and then being betrayed by those so-called friends in an environment that parallels 1990s Los Angeles. There is so much customization in this game. Clothes, working out, what you eat, it all matters and makes the game rather enjoyable. This is quite often considered to be one of the greatest GTA games of all time, and for good reason, it's a masterpiece on the PS2. I have yet to find any flaws with it, and it remains a time-cherished entry for me.
Then for some reason, Rockstar decided to hop onto the handheld spectrum for a little while. Their first venture into this would be Grand Theft Auto Advance, which was severely limited by the Game Boy Advance's technological framework. You still had a genuine GTA experience, but for the most part, it was what you expect from a GBA game when compared to the other entries. They would kind of make up for it with two spin-off games for the PSP called Liberty City Stories and Vice City Stories. At least it had that aesthetic GTA Advance it fell short. In 2008, the PS3 was thriving. People were stupid excited to see what Rockstar had up their sleeve. And then came Grand Theft Auto 4. Grand Theft Auto 4 puts you in the role of a European immigrant, Nico Bellic, meeting up with his cousin to go bowling. Oh God, does your cousin want to go bowling? Bowling all the time. Nico, let's go bowling. But I digress. You might laugh. That's one of many, many things you can do. For the first time on a GTA platform, it felt like a living environment. Go to cyber cafes, hit on ladies through a parody dating app, use the phone to call, organize dates, outings with your friends, the list goes on. GTA 4 was a really fucking awesome game. It was so well received they expanded the game twice. The Lost and the Damned and the Ballad of Gay Tony, which both add their own plot elements as independent stories that parallel the main game. Then they released another handheld game, GTA China Wars. It looked exactly what you would think it would look like. I mean, it was the DS. No offense, there's some really great games out there for the DS, but relegating the action of GTA to a handheld, or realistically any AAA title that demands so much attention, often just sucked. The most recent game is GTA 5, which allows you to play as 3 different protagonists almost at the same time, letting you swap between them nearly any time you want to. The main central character is Franklin, but you can also play as Trevor and Michael. This game is amazing, but honestly, it hasn't felt like Rockstar has cared that much about the single-player experience since their success with GTA Online, which takes place in the universe of GTA 5. Hopefully, we hear more about GTA 6 soon. Supposedly, it's gonna be massive, and I really hope they make it.
LA Noire is one of the most interesting games that Rockstar ever created, and that puts you in the perspective of a police officer. Usually you're the bad guy, and in this one you were the good guy. It also has some awesome mechanics that up to now weren't really utilized well. For starters, it's a very open world. You can essentially drive the entirety of Los Angeles in the 40s. Another key aspect is the facial animation. It's so good that they managed to make it a key mechanic in the game itself. This was a great exhibition of the capabilities of not only the engine that Rockstar was using, but also the capabilities of the PS3. In terms of the story, you play as Cole Phelps, a World War II veteran turned police officer turned detective, who must interview suspects and read their facial expressions to determine if they're lying or telling the truth. You could do this.
Home in bed. You're full of shit, Jacob. The truth is you hated that bitch. You followed her and dragged her into the car and then took her out to the moors. She woke up and you smashed her face in with a socket wrench.
No.
And then you stomped her. You stomped her because she's a drunken whore and she treated you like shit. You stomped her for all the years you had to take it. You stomped her because you are such a weak fucking sister, Jacob, and you wanted to erase all memory of it. Go on, try to deny it.
I was at home. I should have gone to her at the bar, but I didn't. You can't prove I wasn't home.
Looks like I made a mistake.
Or you could get it right, and at the end of the case, you get rated and ultimately you follow the plot of a film noir title. There are tons of side missions that pop up in the form of police emergencies, great storytelling, all aligned with the whole film noir style that was really popular during the 40s. This is 100% a title worth checking out.
Ever heard of a game so violent, so in your face and soaked in gore that 10 countries banned it? Well, you are about to. This survival horror adventure hack-and-slash survival stealth game was the brainchild of Rockstar North. You basically go through scenes taking out enemies through whatever means available. You can also straight up execute them. This game was very high visibility when it came out because of its violence. Tons of politicians and even Jack Thompson, the guy who got disbarred from being a lawyer for his anti-gaming crusade, had something to say about it. It was also unfortunately linked to a murder in England. Because of the violence, it was banned in New Zealand, and if you owned it, you could be charged by the police. The sequel, Manhunt 2, which had it even worse, was banned by numerous countries, and adults-only rating for about a while, which affected every system that it was released for, as at the time Sony and Nintendo did not allow AO titles on their consoles. This resulted in a heavily censored version of the game that just barely skirted by with an M rating, and 18+ ratings throughout the rest of the world. If you like killing people with zero regards for what you're doing, then this is for you.
Midnight Club. Traditionally, every company has their own take on different genres. For example, in the survival horror genre, Capcom has Resident Evil, Tecmo has Fatal Frame, Konami has Silent Hill, you get the picture. This is also true for racing. EA has Need for Speed, Sony has Gran Turismo, Microsoft has Forza, and Rockstar has Midnight Club. Midnight Club started off with the titular title, Midnight Club Street Racing, in 2000. It owes its roots to a manga that was written by Michiharu Kusunoki. If you compare the logos, you kind of see the nod, if you will. Midnight Club operated like many of the first entries in racing games. Zero plot, all simulation. It's what it was. The kicker here was that it did have elements of open world gameplay, but for the most part, it was linear missions. The sequel wasn't that different. Midnight Club 2 looked better and features the ability for the car to be damaged. The races? Well, again, you weren't inherently tied to a circuit like games such as Need for Speed Underground, which actually had plot interweaved much more than Midnight Club at the time. It's a fun game. The big one you hear people talk about in this series is Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition, which was again the exact same game, but it had tons more cars, many of which were licensed, and for the first time you could modify your car. This game also saw another edition with Dub Edition Remix in 2006. The last main entry in the series would be Midnight Club Los Angeles, which is a beautiful title and is worth a play if you're into racing games in the slightest. All in all, this is just your standard racing series, so if you're into it, you're into it.
Oh man, Red Dead. Now this series has roared back to relevance recently. Red Dead Redemption 2 was a massively anticipated game. I gotta say, Rockstar knows how to make amazing titles, and they do even better at making sure if there's a significant hiatus for a series, that it comes back in full stride. I think that's what makes them so admirable. Anyway, Red Dead is a classic western. You play as Red, who's looking for a treasure, and if you are more familiar with the modern entries, you might think that the Red Dead series was always open world. Not so, my friend. Red Dead Revolver, the first game in the series, feels more like an arcade adventure game where you go between linear quests. There's no travel in between, you just hop between various characters and missions. It is a solid game, but it feels very PlayStation 2 era. And it's kind of dark, like graphically dark. Hard to explain. Honestly, if you want to play the Red Dead series, and I hate to say this, just start with the next game in the series.
This game was yet another masterpiece from Rockstar, this time on the PS3. You play as John Marston in one of the best tragic hero western storylines to date. As a bounty hunter, you must take out pretty much everyone that you ever trusted just to come to the penultimate moment in the game. The map is huge and there are tons of side quests to do, and this was only expanded in the prequel Red Dead Redemption 2, a fantastic series that we hope doesn't see its end with 2. Red Dead Redemption has received the GTA Online treatment with the multiplayer Red Dead Online, and I don't really like it that much, but Red Dead Redemption pretty much lately has received the GTA Online treatment with the multiplayer Red Dead Online. Hopefully we'll see a little bit more. Smuggler's Run is probably one of those game series that you remember seeing on the shelf as a kid but probably forgot. Remember when we talked about Angel Studios earlier? This is one of their games, which of course was published by Rockstar Games as a launch title. Pretty big deal, huh? The story is simple though. You're a smuggler and you move cargo, aka drugs, over the course of 34 missions, dodging the CIA, rival gangs, or even the US Border Patrol. It even saw a sequel with Smuggler's Run 2 Hostile Territory, but honestly, it wasn't a format that would stick. It's a shame too. Pretty cool little game series.
The full title is a doozy, so let's just say it with pride. Rockstar Games presents Table Tennis. Yeah, it's a table tennis. But the most important thing to know here is that it was the first game to use the Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, which was later used for Grand Theft Auto 4, Red Dead Redemption, Max Payne 3, Grand Theft Auto 5, and Red Dead Redemption 2. While it's a highly accurate simulation of table tennis, this isn't what Rockstar was really known for. Sure, the game is cool and gorgeous, but when push comes to shove, it really didn't sell well. This was just a throwaway title for a very specific market.
Finally, last but not least, The Warriors. It's basically a game that parallels to some capacity the film from 1979, bringing all the classic gangs from the film with the exception of the Destroyers. Imagine GTA, but wearing the clothes of that film. To be honest, most games that involve open-world exploration with a smidge of violence owe their roots to Grand Theft Auto. Bully, Saints Row, True Crime, you name it, it probably ties back to Grand Theft Auto somehow. All in all, this game was simply fantastic, like nearly all the other standalones from Rockstar.
Well, that episode didn't really go as I wanted it to. It's kind of hard to find some information about those really small companies, especially once they start having tons of corporate takeovers. You have to go to Wikipedia, and then from Wikipedia, find more articles that exist on the internet about the companies before. Kind of like researching your citations is the best way to say it. Rockstar is a very interesting company, and more so have been about being in your face versus making games, I think, that go the long run. I'm not too big of a fan of them solely because of what they're doing with Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto 5 went over, 3 different consoles, so it's kind of frustrating to me not to move forward in that chapter with an amazing franchise, but that's neither here nor there. But anyway, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. If you like what you saw, hit that subscribe button. It's free 99, and if you want to see what I do every day, go down to my Twitch, which is down in the description below. I'd love to see you there. Right now, we are playing Pokemon Snap, the new one. And then we're going to be playing Cameo, but I don't know what I'm going to be playing by the time this video comes out. Arya says bye. I don't know if they can see you. Bye. And as always, from my family to your family, good energy, good vibes, Fortifier out.